Alrighty guys, so welcome back to my channel. In this episode we are going to take a look at how we can create this onboarding pagination in React Native using React Native Reanimated layout animations, entering and exiting animations, and I'm also going to show you a trick how to derive shared value based on state index. It's useful whenever you'd like to animate or create an animation out of that. It's useful in this example for the pagination indicator. So without further ado, let's jump straight into VS Code and start building this onboarding pagination animation. Shall we? Alrighty guys, so we are in VS Code here. I've created the project using Expo and I have React Native Reanimated installed. So first thing, I would like to create this onboarding component. Create a new file, onboarding.tsx, create a file, onboarding, hit save, go back to the app and render the onboarding. Great. This onboarding is going to receive three different properties. One is the total number of slides. The second one is the selected slide index and also a callback to set the new selected index. So let's start by defining the state for selected index. Selected index, selected index is going to be a use state starting from 0 and pass those total as, let's say, 4 different slides, selected index, and on index change is going to be the selected index. To go back to the onboarding and define those total, selected index, and set on index change is going to be, it's a number and a callback that's going to receive an index and is going to call something. And to ensure that this is working, let's pass the total number of slides is 4. Great. This tutorial is going to be made in two different parts. So the first part is going to be creation of the buttons and apply the layout animations and the entering and exiting animations. And the second part is going to be based on this selected index. We are going to create the pagination, of course, and animate the indicator based on whatever the selected index is going to be using useDerivedValue. Great. So let's start with the buttons. And I will say here, I'm going to create a view. And this view is going to have two different buttons. One button is going to have text of back, and another button that's going to have, if you are on the last slide, so we are going to display finish, otherwise we are going to display continue. Great. Now this is complaining because button doesn't exist. So this button is going to be a custom button component that's going to extend a pressable with an animated create component. So let's define here the button component. So function button is going to be an animated pressable, and we are going to do something with it. So this animated pressable is going to be an animated that's coming from React Native Reanimated, and we are going to create an animated component and pass the pressable from React Native. Right, so in this way, this animated pressable is going to have access to all reanimated properties like layout animations or entering and exiting, or you can also define your own styles using useAnimatedStyle. Okay. And this button is going to receive some properties. So it's going to be children, style, and the rest as animated prop from React Native Reanimated by the pressable, right? Pressable props. Great. And let's pass the children. And here we are going to pass the style as style and also the rest. So in a nutshell, what we actually did here, we have extended pressable, but this time it's an animated pressable because you'll see in a minute what we are going to do with it. We are going to apply a special style and also some layout animations for the mounting and unmounting as well. Right, so we have those buttons. Now we can go back to the buttons themselves and we can also set the new index. So for the back button, we are going to decrease the index. We can also render selected index instead of the total. So back is going to decrease the index, and the same is going to be for the next button, but this time we are going to say if selected index is equal to total, just return. Otherwise, increase the index. Okay. So it's going to increase, but it's going to stop at 4, which is the total number of slides, which kind of makes sense. So we are also going to change the continue to be finish whenever you are on the last slide, which is great. And as a backup, we can also say here, you know, if selected index is lower or equal than 0, just return, otherwise decrease the index. So in this way, we are also going to clamp it at 0. So this is the interval 0 and the total number of slides. Great, but I don't wanna have those buttons as they are, so I would like to make them on the row. So flex direction is going to be row, and also add a gap of spacing. So let's create this spacing constant here. So I'll say const spacing is equal to 8. And I know that I'll need also a button height of 42. And create those constants at the top here. Great, so add constants. And go back to the style of the button and extend the styles. And I'm gonna say here, you know, the height is going to be button height. We are also going to apply a border radius of button height divided by 2. We are also going to justify the content to the center, align items to the center, and we are also going to add a padding horizontal of spacing multiplied by 2. So in this way, we create some spacing, you know. And now we can go back to where we render the buttons, and for the back button, I would like to specify a different style. So I'll say style, you know, is background color, it's DDD. So we have this beautiful button, and apply the same styles for the other button, but instead of DDD, we are going to be having this blue color, and we also would like to take all the available space by defining a flex one. So the continue button is going to grow in size. Now I don't want to display this button on the first slide, so selected index is greater, display this button. And now we can also remove this if statement, because it's useless, because we don't display the button whenever you are on the first slide. So now we are going to display the button when you're greater than 0, right? And what I like to also apply is a padding around, so spacing and on this text I'm gonna have a style color white. Now I would like to start by animating the entering and exiting, right? So whenever this back button is going to appear, I'm gonna animate it. So if I go back to this reusable button, that's one of the main reasons why we have created it, is to reuse some properties. And one of them is entering. So entering is going to be fade in from left with a springify, damping of 80, of 200. And now whenever I'm going to the next slide, when the back button is going to be mounted, is going to be animated, you see, which is great. And I would like to also animate the exiting. So exiting is going to be fade out left, that's coming from React Native Reanimated with the same damping and stiffness. So now look, you see it's going to animate the exit as well. There is another thing that we need to fix here, and that's the layout animation. You see, whenever the back button is going to be mounted, this continue button is going to have a different layout, so a different size. And instead of just directly snapping into that new layout, I would like to apply a different transition between the old layout and new layout. So in order to do so, Reanimated offers us a layout property, and we can say, you know, the layout is going to be a linear transition, and just copy the same springify with the same damping. And now whenever the back button is going to be mounted, this layout for continue is going to be a transition between the old and the new one, you see. So everything is animated smoothly. And now the last part is, you see, the continue button is not transitioning the layout, so it doesn't know how to transition the layout. So we can copy this layout, move this to a constant, so layout transition, because we are going to reuse it in multiple places, and add this as a layout transition. And we can go to the text itself, and we can specify, you know, we can make it an animated text, the same with the continue button. And for the finish, or for the continue, let's say we are going to animate the transition. So now you see because we have the same layout transition, whenever the layout of the button is going to change, the text within that pressable is going to also animate or transition, apply a transition to the layout, which is great. And now the missing part is the entering and exiting between continue and finish. So I'm gonna add entering as a fade down, unify, damping and stiffness, and the exiting is going to be fade out up with the same stiffness and damping, and copy the same transition to this continue button as well. The problem is that now there is no transition between those elements, and the reason is because we need to add a key. So React is going to keep track of those elements across the transitions and the unmounting and mounting of them. So I'll say a key is going to be finish, and the same for the other button, continue. So in this way we can keep track of the elements. You see, they're going to be animated. Oh, that's quite great actually. So we have added a layout animation to ensure this transition between the old layout and the new layout. We have added entering and exiting animations to apply this fade in, fade out element, and we have also created a layout animation inside this pressable, so whatever we are going to render inside it is also going to be aware of the layout changes and is going to transition between those two different states. And last, whenever you are going to jump on the last element or last slide of the carousel, we are also going to animate the elements within the pressable, which is great. Alrighty, now because we have this animation, let's move to the next section of this tutorial, and that's the pagination indicator, or the dots and the indicator itself. So I'm going to create a component here that's going to be pagination. And this pagination, let's render it as a sibling, so we don't care about the onboarding. So pagination is pagination, right? And this is going to receive some properties, and one of them is the selected index, right? And the total number of the elements, because we need to calculate how many dots to display and which one is the active one, right? It kind of makes sense. So we need to specify this total, it's total, and selected index, it's selected index, of course. And now this pagination is going to include two different parts. One is the indicator and the other one is the list of dots. And I know for a fact that we need to specify some constants, and one is the dot container. Each individual dot is going to be a square that's going to render a dot in the middle. So I'm gonna say, you know, the dot container is going to be 24, and the dot size is going to be dot container divided by 3. 1/3 of this dots container is going to be the dot itself, right? So we can calculate where to position the indicator. Great. So now we can go to the pagination and render the list of dots. And I'm gonna say, you know, I'm gonna create an array that's going to start from the total. I'm gonna get a keys, and I'm gonna map over this. I'll get the I and create a dot, render a dot, and pass the index as I, and also the key here is going to be dot I. Okay, great. Create a dot component, and I'll say a function dot is going to be a view that's going to have a different style. So it's going to have a width of dot size, height of dot size, border radius, dot size. And let's add the background color black for now. Okay, background color. Okay, so we have those dots here. And of course, we also need to have the index as index. Great. So now we have this list of dots. This view that's going to render the dots. Let's wrap the dots into a view and apply a flex direction of row. Okay, and each individual dot, it's actually going to have a different view, right? So it's going to be the view that's going to contain the dot itself is going to have a width of dot container, height of dot container, right? So each individual dot is going to be, if I'm gonna add a background color of red, you'll see that each individual dot, it's inside the dot container, right? And if I'm gonna justify this to the center and align items to the center, we have this. It's easier for us to calculate where to position the indicator. Instead of using measure, for example, we know that each individual one is a square. We know the dots container size, and based on the index, we can change the width of that indicator. Okay, and now this one, we are gonna justify the content to also align items to the center. So we can modify we can display those here. And if we go back to the view, that's also going to render the pagination in the view, add a gap of spacing just to create some, or even more, right? So we are going to create some gap between those. Now what I would like to do is to create a derived value based on this selected index. So whenever this selected index is going to be changed, I'm gonna animate. I'm gonna return a derived value that's using the spring function. So I'll create here an animation. Animation is going to be a useDerivedValue, and useDerivedValue is going to return withSpring and go to the selectedIndex, and also using the damping 80 and stiffness 200. So basically what this is saying, whenever the selected index is going to be changed, apply a spring function between the old index and the current selected index. So in this way we can animate elements, right? So this animation, we need to pass it to the dot itself. So dot animation is going to be animation, and also go back to the dot and specify the type here. So animation is going to be a shared value that's coming from React Native Reanimated as a number. And I would like to animate the dot color, right? Based on the current slide. And what I need to do is to define some colors. Active dot is going to be FFF, and inactive dot is going to be, let's say, AAA. Okay, so let's go back now to the dot, and here, because we are receiving an animation, we can create a new set of styles. So I'll say styles, it's equal to a useAnimated style, and we are going to return here background color. We are going to interpolate the color based on the animation value, and the input range is going to be index -1, index +1, and the output range is going to be, if you are on the next, so basically we are here on the first slide. If you are on the next, which is index -1, this position, I would like to be the inactive color. Otherwise, make this as an active color. And of course, pass these styles to the dot itself. So animated view, and apply the styles, remove the background color because we don't need it. And now you'll see that whenever I'm going to the next, you see there is an animation, but you don't see because of the so if I'm going to do FFF, let's say, right? So you see, look. So if you are on the slide number 3, you know, it's whatever was before that, which is index +1, make this as an active dot, otherwise it's going to be a gray one. And now, because we have this style in place, let's go back to the FFF. We can create the indicator. Go to the pagination itself, and whenever we are rendering the elements, add a pagination indicator, and also add the animation as the animation, and create this function here. So I'll say function pagination indicator is going to get the animation, right? And is going to return an animated view. There's going to have a style of background color. We are going to position this absolute, left 0, top 0, height, dot container, width for the radius as a dot container. Okay. And now what we need to do is we need to modify the width of this pagination indicator based on the animation value. So let's create that style now. So const styles, to use animated style and return width, which is going to be dot container plus dot container multiplied by the animation value. So initially we are going to start from dot container, and then based on this animation value we are going to increment it by the dot container. Apply this style, press refresh. Now look, you see, and yeah, it's just because this animation value, it's a derived value, and we are applying a spring function to it and pass it down to the dot indicator and the dot itself. We can actually animate and interpolate the value and apply some animations. Before closing the tutorial, I would like to fix this issue where you see the indicator is going is greater than the actual container, and the reason for that is because we have miscalculated the total length, right? So total, it's basically a number, but selectedIndex, it's actually going to start from 0, so we need to add into account that total -1 and also total -1 whenever we display the finish button or we increase the index. So now we are going to fix this issue. Alrighty guys, so that was it. It was a long tutorial, I know, but I hope that you have learned something new, especially around entering and exiting animations for the buttons, also the layout animation. Whenever the layout is going to change, you would like to apply a transition between those two different changes, layout changes. And last but not least, how to use useDerivedValue to derive the new value based on a state change and apply a spring effect or a spring function to it that you can later use or interpolate as we have seen for the pagination indicator and also for the dot. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the ring bell notification to be notified whenever I'm posting something new or go live. Otherwise, see you in the future video. Bye bye guys.